Hey guys, Matt here. In today's video, we're going to be looking at another super endgame crafting. Now this one is going to be a bit more niche. We're going to be looking at a perfect 12-link wand for either Blade Vortex or Winter Orb, which is definitely not the super meta skills right now, but definitely very solid builds. And we wanted to make something which we thought we weren't going to be able to finish. Now the average cost for this item is something like 7,000 Exalts last time I checked. And we made it for well under 2,000, so we got extremely lucky, and once again, a bit of a miracle that it's full tier 1, so we're going to be looking at the item right here. I'm going to be giving you guys a breakdown on the modifiers and why we chose them, and then after that, we're going to be looking at a step-by-step guide on crafting something like this yourself. So if you're interested in just the step-by-step guide, look in the later portion of the video. Now, unfortunately, this one doesn't come with any crazy story. It wasn't bricked by anybody. We didn't scour it by accident. Nothing super crazy happened. It was just a regular craft, and matter of fact, it was a bit of a miracle craft because of how lucky we were when it came to the prefixes, which are the hard part of this craft. Now, this is a bit of a spoiler alert. These items, or this wand, unlike most other 12-link items that you'll see in this game, you have to start with the suffixes, which is sad and annoying because the suffixes are the easy part, typically. Getting the prefixes is the hard part because the pool is a lot larger and the weightings on the mods that you care for are a lot smaller. So you typically always want to guarantee your prefixes. Now, to make up for that, we have a bench-crafted mod, but it still doesn't really make up for it, which I'll showcase a little bit later on with how expensive it is to actually get fully T1 on this item. So giving you guys a quick rundown on the modifiers that we chose here and whatnot. So we went with an Imbued Wand, and the reason for that is while it doesn't have the highest spell damage base, which you could ask for, I think it goes up to 42% on something like an Opal Wand, it has a very low, or at least medium, intelligence requirement of 188, which makes a lot more sense and is a lot more in line with support gems and main skill gems compared to something like an Opal Wand, which I think has like a 222 intelligence requirement, which requires you to basically look for an additional 40 intelligence on your build, which could be the difference between having that one extra skill point or not having it, or having that one extra suffix slot on a ring or a helmet or whatever, instead of not having it. So going with an Imbued Wand, you sacrifice the smallest, tiniest bit of damage. We're looking at something like 0.1% on your entire build, and you are gaining a lot of quality of life. Now, also, it comes with the highest attack speed on a wand, which is really good for people who like to use shield charge, which is not necessarily super common, but given that this is a wand which is made to be used with the Squire, it's definitely a possibility. And if you're looking at speed mapping, it's actually one of the best movement skill in the game, paired with Headhunter because of how much attack speed you get from it. Alright, now let's look at the actual mods themselves. For the enchant, we went with increased elemental damage per 2% quality. Now, there's two options. Either we go with that, or we go with 1% AOE per 2% quality. Now, the thing about going with AOE is that it might not actually benefit every single build user ever. Increased elemental damage is just more damage, or increased damage, right? Everybody gets it. When it comes to AOE, the way that it works in the game, when it comes to AOE scaling, is that it's the square root of your area of effect modifier. So it works in thresholds, and you have to reach the next threshold in order to get +1 radius on your spell or on your skill of any kind. Otherwise, basically, you could add additional AOE to your build, but it doesn't actually benefit you whatsoever. So because of this, we went with increased elemental damage instead because it benefits everybody. Now, looking at the prefixes, we went with T1 Cold Penetration, which is best in slot and the hardest part of the wand, pretty much. Getting T1 Cold Penetration is extremely difficult. And also very annoying, which is really nice. Now, it means that we can't use Awakened Cold Penetration, but that's perfectly fine because there are other good support gems that we can use instead. And because Cold Penetration is pretty much an insane prefix because it double dips. Yes, it gives you level 20 Cold Penetration, but it also gives you a hybrid of 60 cold damage, which if you're playing a pure cold build, which most people would be for these builds, the Blade Vortex or Winter Orb, which are the users for this wand, playing pure cold, this 60% cold damage is roughly 60% as good as a T1 spell damage roll on an actual spell damage roll, right? So it's very, very strong. Next, we have the socketed skills deal 40% more spell damage. That's a no-brainer, right? It doesn't take the spot of a support gem, but it's actually stronger than most support gems in the game. Now, it used to be about the same, but a couple patches ago, GGG kind of cracked down on pretty much every support gem and nerfed them by like 5 to 15%. more damage, right? So it was a pretty big deal. Now this 40% stayed 40%, which means that nowadays it's actually stronger than most support gems. And then we have the crafting mod of +2 support gem. Now you might be wondering why this is not an actual natural modifier. Like for example, the claw has only natural modifiers, right? No crafting mod. And the reality is, simply put, it's the best that you can ask for. It's better than T1 spell damage. It's better than any T1 flat damage. It's better than, say, having +1 level to socketed, +1 level to all spell gems. It's better than +1 level to all physical or cold gems if you're using BV or Winter Orb. It's literally the best prefix in the game. And the reason for that is normally this wouldn't be the case because you would only get 3 links, right? Which one of them would be your main skill, say Blade Vortex, and then you'd have 2 links only. So this support gem thingy would be pretty weak. But the thing is, this +2 level to socketed support gem is going to apply to Empower. Now you're going to use a level 4 Empower, and with this, it's going to become level 6, which is going to give you 5 levels to your Blade Vortex or Winter Orb, which are skills which benefit greatly from additional levels. Matter of fact, it's the best way to scale them in the game, up to around 30 additional levels, which 5 levels makes it really easy to get to that point. So it's better than, say, having a +2 and another +2 wand if you were not going to use BV in like a 6-link chest. So this actual crafting mod here, +2 support gem, is literally insane for how good it is. And because there's only so many good support gems, and we're using a lot of them, right? Cold penetration being used, area of effect, crit strike chance, and crit multi all being used, means that there's only so many good support gems actually left. Enough that we can fill up this wand because we get, of course, our main skill, which is, say, BV, and then Empower, and then that leaves us 4 support gems of our choice, which could be things like Unleash for Blade Vortex, and then, you know, also you could go with Awakened added Cold or Awakened added Lightning or whatever you want, really. That's going to depend on your POV. But there's a few other support gems which you can fill up in the last 4 slots to make this pretty much the highest damage weapon that you could ask for on a build like that. Of course, we're going to go with increased area of effect with the hybrid area damage on the Suffix, number 1. This is just very good because the increased area of effect means that we don't have to scale any area of effect on the build, on the tree, or on our clusters, for example, which means we can go higher on the damage. And it also means that we don't have to waste a socket for it either. And things like Winter Orb, things like BV benefit greatly from it in terms of quality of life, for clear speed especially, for stuff like that, yeah. Then, of course, we also have the increased critical strikes, but this is the hybrid for increased critical strikes chance for spells. Now, there is a wand right now which exists, which is the exact copy of this, except that instead of having critical strike chance for spells as a suffix, it has critical strike chance local. Now, the level 20 increased critical strike support is the same, but the actual hybrid can be either local, which is to the wand itself, which only benefits attacks, or it could be to spells, which is going to benefit your actual spell. Now, this 82% increased critical strike chance to spells is really strong. It's kind of like the equivalent of having 0.8 of a diamond flask on your build at all times. It's huge. It's a lot of actual crit, which is why we go for that. Then we have socketed gems are supported by increased critical damage, which is also going to be really good, and it comes as a hybrid with the crit multi as well, so again, very, very good. Now, the cool thing about this increased crit chance and crit damage is that there are support gems which don't have an Awakened variant, or like alt quality, which are super, super strong, so they are basically brain dead. You always go for them as suffixes on 12-link weapons. Now, quick tangent when it comes to that. Why am I calling these 12 links? Is because they are made to be used with the Squire. I had a lot of people tell me that when it came to the claw video, like, isn't this just a 9-link? Well, yes, technically it's a 9-link because there's a 3 links and then the 6 support gems, which all count as links for a 9-link, but no one ever calls them that because they are made to be used with the Squire. You're not going to use a weapon like that without the Squire pretty much ever, so this is why we always call them 12 links. I've never seen them being called 9 links, literally ever. So that's pretty much the breakdown on the modifiers. Best in slot, full T1, really, really happy with it. Now, I've already spoiled that we have to start with the suffixes on this item, so I'll give you guys a bit of a rundown on the step-by-step. So I could show you guys in Craft of Exile, but the first step is Awakener Orbing, which is kind of complicated on Craft of Exile, so I'll just say it out loud instead. So you're going to start with a Shaper Wand, just Shaper by itself with the level 20 increased critical strikes and the increased critical strike chance to spells. It's very important that you go with the one to spells. Again, it's like 0.8 of a diamond flask for free on your build. Now you're going to get that mod by itself and you're going to imprint that using a Chrysic Chimeral, which is the beast which allows you to make a save state for your item. And you're going to Awakener Orb this with the Socketed Gems are supported by level 20 area of effect, which does not have a tag from the Elder influence. And this is going to be basically just a regular Awakener's Orb, right? Which looks something like this, which I don't have any of right now, which allows you to basically just smack two items together, and it's going to take one influence mod from each of the influences and guarantee those, and then the rest of the item is going to be random. Now, once you do that, you're basically going to be given a wand, which is most likely going to have 3 suffixes, unfortunately, which means you need to annul the 3rd suffix. Now, once you've done that and you have just the area of effect with the increased critical strike chance to spells, the weird thing about this increased critical strike chance to spells is that it's actually not blocking critical strike chance to spells. It's only blocking increased critical strikes local modifier, which means that the way that you're going to do this is you're going to craft on suffixes cannot be changed, which will require you to have an open prefix as well, and then you're going to reforge crit. Now, when you reforge crit with an open suffix, it's going to guarantee a critical modifier, and there's a 1 in 12, if I remember correctly, that you're going to get increased critical damage multiplier with the increased critical damage support, which is what you actually want. So this is relatively cheap. We're looking at less than 100x typically to make this because the Awakener's Orb are fairly cheap, the imprints are fairly cheap, and it doesn't take that many tries to actually get it. Because the increased critical strikes support actually blocks out the other increased crit strikes support. So I'm going to go ahead and showcase that real quick. So if I head over to PoEDB and we look at the wands, you can see that if I look for crit modifiers here, right, there's crit chance to spells. Now this is not blocked, so there's 6,000 waiting there. There's multi, which is what we want. There's crit chance to crit chance right here, which is blocked, however weird that is. And then there's also this one here, which has the increased critical strikes. Now this is blocked because we have this one here, which is blocking both of those. And as you can see, the tag is critical strike chance increase, and this tag over here is critical strike chance increased. Meanwhile, this one is spell critical strike chance increase. So it is possible when you reforge crit that you actually get this. It's possible that you also get this over here, which has a weighting of 6,000, 6,000, and then finally there's the one that you actually want, which is the Elder modifier, which has a weighting of 2,000. So what's that? 2,000 and then 6 and 6, so that's 14,000, and you have a 1. So it's a 1 in 14 actually to get the increased critical multiplier to be tier 1. So again, it's less than 100 exalts for the suffixes. It's honestly relatively easy to make when you think about the actual item as a whole costing something like 7,000 exalts. So if the prefix or the suffixes are less than 100x, where are all those exalts going? And this is where we get to the really annoying part. We have to get Socketed Gems are supported by level 20 cold penetration. And what we're going to do is we're going to craft on suffixes cannot be changed, and we're going to reforge cold. Now, the cold penetration, as you can see, doesn't have a spell tag. It doesn't have anything like that. It really has only damage, elemental, and cold and gem tag, which means you have to go for the cold. So here's where it gets fun. If you look on Craft of Exile, right, and you're to make a wand, so one-handed weapons, wand, and then we look at influences of Shaper and Elder, and we're going to do Exalted Orb with cold, and then only prefixes are opened. You will see that our odds here of getting cold penetration at T1 is 142 attempts on average. Now this is times 2, because every single time you do this, it's going to cost you 2 exalts. We're not going to account for the price of the actual Reforged Cold itself, because they're super common, whatever, but that is 284 exalts to just see this mod one time on average. And here's the thing. Let's just say that you see it paired with another modifier, right? Well, since you have 3 suffixes, you can't do the trick where you do like cannot roll caster or cannot roll attack and then you annul or anything like that. You pretty much, and also because it doesn't have either the caster or the attack tag, so you have to annul because you need it to be by itself. It can't have any other modifier with it, or at least it can't have more than one other modifier with it. You need an open prefix. in order to do either aug-inf or non-inf to inf. And then because you need the last prefix to be open for the level of socketed support gems. So yes, it's 142, which is again 284 exalts. But if it comes with 6 modifiers, you gotta roll over it. If it comes, because you're not going to, you know, annul it, because you could brick your suffixes. If it comes with, say, another prefix, and you have an open prefix to craft on suffixes cannot be changed to a null, then it's a 50-50 that you brick it. So this number here is actually very misleading. It's probably more around something like 350 to 400 exalts on average to see this modifier one single time to be able to proceed to the next step, which is either aug influence or remove non-influence, add influence, which is how we're going to get the 40% more spell damage. Now, full disclosure, if you were to try to craft this and you get T2, I would highly recommend you keep it, because in this case, it's only 48, which is maybe like 60. So that's like 120x, which is basically 3 times cheaper than if you were going for purely T1. So yeah, the fact that we got T1, again, this is another one of these crafts, which was a bit of a miracle. Now, once you have that, you're basically going to need to go for an augment influence. Now, looking at an augment influence here, what we're going to be going for is, let's see, so we're going to go ahead and remove that. We're going to block it by, right-clicking it. And then this is going to block all the modifiers which have the same tag. So it actually blocks quite a few things. And what we're going to be going for is the more spell damage, right? This is what we actually want as the last prefix. Now we're going to do augment influence prefix 41 attempts. Okay, so every single one of these attempts right now is something like 60 to 70 exalts, right? So let's just count it at 60 times 41 attempts, right? With only prefixes open. That's 2,460 exalts on average to see this modifier when you augment. But here's the thing. Every single time that you don't see the modifier, you need to annul, right? And you need to go back to getting T1 cold penetration if you brick it, which, remember, is one in like 120 plus tries, which is something like 400x every single attempt. So this 41 attempts, you also need to multiply by the cost of getting the T1 cold penetration, which is probably, let's just say 300x on average. So yeah, it gets pretty ridiculous. Now, remember earlier I said something about 7,000 exalts? That's because I did the math on much cheaper augment influences and whatnot. And also, I think that was with the math with having a T2 cold penetration. But for T1 cold penetration, it's something like 14,000 exalts to make this item. Yeah, we made it for like 2,000. That's just RNG for you. Sometimes you're gonna get lucky, sometimes you're not gonna get lucky. We could have easily passed through all the currency that we had, and we could have never hit it, but here it is, it exists. And we are super, super happy with this craft once again. It's definitely not one that we're going to be going for in the future. I don't think so, because I don't think the returns are going to be anywhere near the actual investment. But what's cool about it is that now it actually exists in a perfect state. And it's going to be available for people who do play Standard, because no matter what a lot of people watching this video might think, Standard does have a player base, and typically they like perfect items. They are going to go with things like 12-link builds. They're going to spend, thousands of exalts into their builds, and of course we're going to have a very cheap mirror fee, probably 50x like the most of our items, because we don't really care about the currency, and because we want people to be able to benefit from our insane luck, I guess. Now, to finish out the video, I'm just going to go ahead and showcase how this last modifier, this 1 in 41, actually happened, because it so happened that it was made by a friend of ours, which also helped us with the 12-link claw crafting, helped us quite a bit, especially with finishing it up. So he is a streamer by the name of Dezzle_main. I'll be linking his Twitch in the description if you want to drop a follow. But here is basically how this went down. So, as you can see, the wand had the increased critical strikes support and crit multi, the area of effect, the cold penetration, and then you can see that the last prefix that it had was 1 to 3, which is tier 9 physical damage. And the reason for that is because we slammed an Exalt. It's cheaper than going for, say, an augment influence or something like that. So if there's no augment influences, or if non-influence to influence is cheaper than augment influence, you can just slam an Exalt, which is going to give you a random prefix, and then you can non-influence to influence. Now the downside is if you get an influence prefix, you can basically lose your ability to actually aug, but the odds are definitely in your favor looking at the weightings. Okay, so there we go. this is what happened. He put it in, and then he did some good old non-influence to influence. And
influence to influence, dude.
Didn't reforge,
Rage.
you know, didn't scour it,
right?
didn't brick it,
Hopefully,
which was very good.
Crazy.
Because we definitely didn't want to have to redo this. And he didn't even look at it. And then he looked at it, and then he realized, holy crap, I just hit 40% more spell damage. And then here's...
Is it done? It's done, dude.
And then here's Vortex, which is my crafting buddy.
It's done.
Who was just kind of pogging it out, just going full, you know, nerdgasm in the chat. Kind of like me when the other guy hit the 12-link claw. Realized that we had just made another insane item and somehow finished it within a fraction of what it should cost. And that is basically how this wand was finished. And there you have it. Soul Bite. Now, the saddest part about this is honestly the name of it. I'm not super happy about it. Soul Bite is just kind of a boring name compared to something like... Actually, you know what? Our items kind of all have horrible names, except this one. Doom Mark is honestly pretty cool. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the video. Hopefully you found it you know, enjoyable. Hopefully you learned a little something in the actual crafting process of such an item. A lot of people don't realize that in some cases, even when it comes to 12-link items, you need to start with the suffixes. So I hope you learned a little something. Before I go, as always, I want to say a massive thank you to my supporters. So here they are. Go ahead and lower, reduce that a bit. So Rascal, Brandon, welcome back. Thomas Mass, Nake, The Great Master, Alex, Tim, Mercury, Johnny, Nolgar, Solmok, Exo, Jericosta, and Bizen. Now this is probably going to be our last, for real this time, big craft of the league. If it's not, well, be on the lookout. There's going to be another video if we actually end up, you know, hitting something else. Spoiler alert, we're currently working on a 12-link int-stacking wand, which is something like 20,000 exalts on average to make. So we're not thinking we're going to be able to finish it before the end of the league, but who knows? That'll be Matthew signing out. Until the next one. Peace.